The air outside Downing Street was thick with tension, the kind that grips your chest before you even understand what's happening. Flags waved in the wind, some bearing national colors, others scrawled with angry slogans. The chants were relentless, echoing off the cold stone walls like a drumbeat of frustration. Traitor! Traitor! The word tore through the air, sharper than the autumn breeze, and it was aimed at one man, Sir Keir Starmer, the Prime Minister of the United Kingdom. For many watching at home, this was more than just another protest. It was a moment that seemed to lay bare the deep fault lines running through the country. Outside the famous black door of number 10, the cameras caught a scene that would dominate headlines for days. Starmer, flanked by his security detail, walked out to face the press. Behind the barrier, dozens of protesters shouted, their voices raw with anger, their faces set with determination. It was not polite disagreement. It was fury. It was betrayal. It was years of distrust boiling over into the streets. To understand why this confrontation carried such weight, you have to step back and see the bigger picture. Keir Starmer came to power promising stability after years of political turbulence. He vowed to restore trust in leadership, to bring unity where division had reigned, and to put the country back on a path of calm governance. But for his critics, those promises now ring hollow. They see him as a man who has compromised too much, who has bent to pressures from all sides, and in doing so has lost sight of the principles they thought he stood for. The chant of traitor is not just about one decision or one policy. It is the product of 100 smaller grievances, each piling onto the last. Some accuse him of breaking pledges he made during his leadership campaign. Others say he has ignored the voices of ordinary people in favor of political convenience. And then there are those who see him as a symbol of a political elite that always protects its own, no matter the cost to the public. Whether these criticisms are entirely fair or not is beside the point. In politics, perception is everything, and in moments like this, perception can destroy you. As Starmer stood at the podium, the noise from the crowd seemed almost to merge with the clicking of journalists' cameras. He didn't flinch, but you could see in the tightness of his jaw that he was aware of every word being shouted at him. The country was watching. Every gesture, every pause, every syllable would be dissected within hours on television panels, radio call-ins, and social media threads. This was not just about answering questions from the press. It was about reclaiming authority in the face of open hostility. And yet, there was a strange sort of theater to it all. British politics has always thrived on spectacle, and the image of a leader facing down angry protesters outside Downing Street is one that will be replayed for years to come. For some, it was proof of his resilience, that he would not be intimidated, that he could withstand the pressure. For others, it was the ultimate image of a man disconnected from his people, speaking into microphones while the voices of dissent were literally just meters away. The protesters themselves were a mixed group. Some had traveled hours to be there, carrying homemade placards scrawled in thick black marker. Others were veterans of political activism, used to the cold, the shouting, and the long hours of standing in the street. Among them were disillusioned voters who had once supported Starmer's party, as well as people who had never trusted him from the start. What united them was not a single policy demand, but a shared belief that the man inside number 10 could not be trusted to lead the country in their interest. For Starmer, this moment was a test, not of policy knowledge, not of parliamentary skill, but of presence, the intangible quality that makes or breaks a leader when the pressure is at its highest. He began to speak, his voice calm but firm, weaving through the noise. He acknowledged that the country was divided, that not everyone agreed with his government's direction. But then he pivoted, reminding the crowd, and perhaps himself, of why he believed his leadership was the right course. He spoke of stability, of protecting the economy, of making hard decisions in challenging times. It was a careful balance, showing empathy without yielding, projecting strength without arrogance. Yet as he spoke, the chants didn't stop. That was the uncomfortable reality of this kind of confrontation. No matter how eloquent your words, some people have already made up their minds. And in a digital age, the visual of protesters calling you a traitor will live far longer than the nuances of your speech. Back in the press room, journalists scribbled notes, already crafting the headlines that would define the day. Starmer faces down street fury. Prime Minister heckled as traitor in explosive protest. The framing would matter, because in politics, moments like this are never just about what happened, they're about what people think happened. Supporters would praise his composure, critics would see only defiance in the wrong direction. But perhaps the most revealing thing was not what happened in front of the cameras, but what this moment said about the state of the nation. The UK is in a place where distrust of leaders runs deep, where the word traitor is thrown not just at enemies, but at those who were once seen as allies. It's a place where political promises are weighed against a backdrop of years of disappointment, and where every leader walks a tightrope over a crowd ready to shout them down. Starmer's challenge now is bigger than surviving the day's headlines. It is about finding a way to bridge the chasm between his government and those who feel betrayed by it. Whether that is even possible remains to be seen, but one thing is certain: the image of this confrontation outside Downing Street will linger, a reminder that in politics, the real battle is often fought not in the halls of power, but in the streets just outside. And as the cameras switched off and the crowd began to thin, the echoes of the chants still hung in the air. For Starmer, the work was far from over. In many ways, it was just beginning.